Commander Jin Lee drifted back to consciousness, his head pounding as if someone had used it for target practice. The cold surface beneath him felt strange, smooth yet somehow alive with energy. He blinked several times, his vision slowly clearing, to reveal walls of dark purple crystal surrounding him on all sides. This wasn't his ship. The last thing he remembered was detecting an anomaly near the Cygnus arm, then a massive shadow passing overhead. Jin tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. A thin beam of light cut across the cell from a small window high above. Through it he could see two suns, one red, one blue, casting an eerie glow across what appeared to be an asteroid-turned prison. "Human specimen is awake," came a voice, like grinding glass. Jin turned to see a tall figure standing outside a transparent barrier. The being's body seemed made entirely of living crystal, with facets that caught and reflected light in hypnotic patterns. Its limbs were unnaturally long, and where a face should be, there was only a collection of geometric shapes that somehow functioned as sensory organs. "What am I doing here?" Jin asked, his throat dry. "Who are you?" The crystalline being tilted what passed for its head. "I am Guard Captain Traz of the Varaxian Empire. You are prisoner 7219 in the Obsidian Spire. Your unauthorized exploration vessel entered our territory." Jin slowly got to his feet, noticing his uniform had been replaced with a simple gray jumpsuit. "I'm Commander Jin Lee of Earth's Deep Space Corps. We had no knowledge this region was claimed territory." "Ignorance is not permission," Traz replied, tonelessly. "The human species represents disorder in the galaxy. Your kind adapts too quickly, creates too unpredictably." An energy field hummed as a small opening appeared in the barrier. A tray with what looked like blue gel slid through before the field resealed. "Sustenance," Traz said simply. "Consume." After the guard left, Jin examined his cell more carefully. The walls seemed to pulse faintly with energy. He placed his hand against one surface and felt a strange resonance, almost like the crystal was responding to his touch. Days passed in monotonous routine. Jin learned the prison-housed beings from across the galaxy, all species the Varaxians deemed disruptive to their perfect order. During brief exercise periods in a central chamber, he observed hundreds of cells carved into the asteroid's interior, each holding different beings. On the 5th day, something strange happened. As Jin lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, he noticed tiny fractures in the crystal, hairline cracks that seemed to form patterns. When he focused on one pattern, it appeared to shift slightly. Curious, Jin concentrated harder. The fracture expanded fractionally, then contracted when his attention wavered. He sat up, heart racing. The prison walls were responding to his thoughts. That night, Jin dreamed of the cracks spreading like a web throughout the entire prison. He woke to find the fractures in his cell had indeed grown while he slept. During the next exercise period, a small blue-skinned being with delicate antennae approached him. "You're different," she said quietly. "I'm Tay. I can sense thoughts. Yours are changing the prison." Jin glanced around to ensure no guards were listening. "What do you mean?" "The walls respond to you," Tay whispered. "No one else? Just you. The Varaxians cannot see it." Before Jin could reply, a guard ordered them to separate. Back in his cell, Jin experimented. He focused intensely on the fractures, willing them to expand. Slowly, the tiny cracks grew until one connected with the power conduit for his cell's light. When the connection completed, the light flickered momentarily. Jin smiled. For the first time since his capture, he felt hope. Over the following weeks, Jin learned more from whispered conversations with Tay and other prisoners. The Varaxians weren't the original builders of this technology. They had conquered the creators and claimed their achievements. The true builders were called the Architects, Tay told him during a meal period. They vanished long ago. The Varaxians fear humans. "Because you think like the Architects did." Jin began to understand why the prison responded to him in ways invisible to the Varaxians. Something about human neural patterns matched frequencies the original builders had used. At night, Jin mapped the fractures spreading from his cell, creating an invisible network throughout the prison systems. Each time he concentrated, the web grew stronger. One evening, as Jin meditated on the growing network of cracks, the lights in his cell dimmed completely. In the darkness, tiny blue lines glowed along the fractures he'd been cultivating, forming symbols he didn't recognize but somehow understood. A plan began to form in his mind. The Varaxians had imprisoned the wrong human. They hadn't captured a simple explorer. They'd brought in the key to their own undoing. Jin pressed his ear against the cell wall, listening to Tay's soft voice from the adjacent chamber. The small blue-skinned telepath had become his most valuable ally in the 3 months since his capture. "The guard rotation changes tonight," she whispered through a tiny crack Jin had gradually widened with his mind. "Something big is happening. The Varaxians are nervous." Jin nodded, though she couldn't see him. "Can you sense what's causing it?" "A Varaxian high commander is coming to inspect the prison. They rarely leave the central planets. This could be an opportunity." Jin had spent weeks mapping the invisible network of fractures throughout the prison, expanding his influence over the facility's ancient systems. Each night, he practiced manipulating the energy flows that powered the obsidian spire, causing minor glitches that confused the guards but never enough to raise serious alarm. During exercise period, Jin met with his growing circle of allies. Besides Tay, there was Wook, a 6-limbed engineer whose species specialized in quantum mechanics; Day, a reptilian historian imprisoned for teaching forbidden knowledge; and Min, a former Varaxian scientist who had questioned the Empire's methods. They gathered in the blind spot Jin had discovered, a small corner where the security sensors overlapped incorrectly, creating a dead zone. "The High Commander brings an opportunity," Jin explained quietly. "We need to learn more about the prison's original systems." Min's crystalline features caught the light as she nodded. "I worked in the archives before my imprisonment. The Varaxians didn't build this technology, they conquered the builders." "Who were they?" Jin asked. "They were called the Architects," Min said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Most records were destroyed, but I saw fragments. The Architects built wonders that responded to thought patterns. The Varaxians could never fully replicate their technology." Jin felt a chill run down his spine. "And these prison walls respond to my thoughts." Min's faceted eyes widened. "The Varaxians fear humans because you resemble the Architects in your thinking patterns. That's why exploration into this sector is forbidden." Later that day, during his work assignment cleaning the lower levels, Jin discovered something extraordinary. As he mopped the ancient floor, his sweat dripped onto a section of bare crystal. The spot glowed briefly before fading back to normal. Jin glanced around to ensure no guards were watching, then deliberately pressed his palm against the floor. A soft blue light spread from his touch, illuminating symbols etched deep within the crystal. That night Jin couldn't sleep. His mind raced with possibilities. If the prison truly was Architect technology, and if humans shared some connection with them, perhaps he could access systems the Varaxians didn't even know existed. The next morning, the prison hummed with unusual activity. Guards stood straighter, prisoners were kept in their cells, and cleaning drones worked overtime to polish every surface. "The High Commander arrives today," Tay communicated telepathically to Jin. Her mental voice felt like a gentle breeze in his mind. Jin felt the fracture network he'd been cultivating respond to his excitement. Throughout the day, he focused on expanding his awareness through these cracks, pushing his consciousness into the prison systems. When the High Commander's ship docked, Jin was ready. As the distinguished Varaxian party toured the facility, Jin followed their progress through his fracture network. Listening to conversations no prisoner should have been able to hear. "The human problem grows," the High Commander was saying. "Their expansion reaches dangerous levels. They show the same patterns the Architects did before we contained them." "This specimen has shown no unusual abilities," the prison director replied. "Perhaps the Council's fears are unfounded." Jin smiled in his cell. If only they knew. That night, Jin made a breakthrough. Concentrating on the largest fracture, he pushed his consciousness deeper than ever before. Suddenly he wasn't in his cell anymore, at least not mentally. His awareness floated in a vast network of crystal pathways, seeing the prison as a living organism of energy and light. He could sense every prisoner, every guard, every system. More importantly, he discovered dormant pathways, ancient connections unused for millennia. They led to sealed chambers deep within the asteroid, protected by barriers the Varaxians had never penetrated. When Jin withdrew back to his physical body, he was sweating and exhausted, but exhilarated. He now understood why the Varaxians feared humans. Somehow, human neural patterns could activate architect technology in ways the crystalline Varaxians couldn't. Jin looked at the small collection of allies he had gathered. They didn't just need an escape plan anymore. They needed a rebellion. And thanks to his growing understanding of the prison's true nature, he now knew exactly how to start one. Jin gathered his allies in the maintenance tunnel beneath the exercise yard. 6 beings from 6 different worlds huddled together in the dim blue light cast by the ancient power conduits. They had precious little time before the guards would notice their absence. "It's time," Jin said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've mapped the entire fracture network. The prison isn't just responding to me now, it's helping me." Wook scratched his head with one of his 6 limbs. "Still don't understand how you do it." "I don't fully understand either," Jin admitted. "But I know this. The prison was built to recognize something in human neural patterns, and that gives us our chance." Tay's antennae twitched nervously. "The guards have doubled since the High Commander's visit. They suspect something." Jin nodded. "Which is why we moved tonight." He unfolded a crude map he'd drawn on a scrap of fabric. Using the fracture network, Jin had discovered a forgotten control hub deep within the asteroid. If they could reach it, he believed he could access systems the Varaxians didn't even know existed. "Min, can you disable the drone patrols in Section 4? Jin asked. The former Varaxian scientist nodded, her crystalline features catching the blue light. "For 7 minutes, no more." 7 minutes is all we need to cross to the lower levels, Jin said. "Once there, the fracture network is strong enough for me to hide us from sensors." Day, the reptilian historian, looked skeptical. "No one has ever escaped the obsidian spire. Not in 10,000 years. "No one had a human before," Jin replied with a small smile. That night, as the prison's lighting dimmed to simulate night, Jin lay on his bunk and extended his consciousness into the fracture network. He had grown skilled at this mental projection, able to see through the crystal walls as if they were windows. He watched the guard patterns, noting when they changed shifts. When the moment was right, Jin sent a pulse through the network. A signaled to his allies that it was time. In his cell, the door's locking mechanism responded to Jin's thoughts. Sliding open silently, he slipped out and moved quickly down the corridor, staying in the blind spots he had mapped between security sensors. One by one, he freed his fellow conspirators from their cells. Within minutes, all 6 were making their way toward the maintenance shaft where they had planned to meet. They almost made it unseen. As they approached the final corridor, a guard drone rounded the corner unexpectedly. Before it could sound an alarm, Min stepped forward, her hands moving in precise patterns that confused the drone's Varaxian programming. It hesitated just long enough for Wook to leap forward and disconnect its communication module. "Quick thinking," Jin whispered as they continued on. Once inside the maintenance tunnel, they descended through narrow passages that hadn't been used in centuries. The deeper they went, the stronger Jin felt the resonance between his mind and the surrounding crystal. "We're getting close," he told the others as they reached a massive sealed door covered in unfamiliar glyphs. "This isn't on any prison map." Jin placed his palm against the door. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the symbols began to glow with the same blue light he had seen before. The massive door slid open silently, revealing a chamber that took their breath away. Inside was a vast control room filled with crystalline consoles arranged in a circle. In the center stood a column of pulsing light that reached from floor to ceiling. "What is this place?" Tay whispered in awe. "The heart of the prison," Jin replied, stepping toward the central column, the part the Varaxians could never access. As Jin approached the column, it grew brighter, responding to his presence. When he touched it, information flooded his mind. Schematics, systems, protocols, everything he needed to take control of the prison. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. "They've discovered we're missing," Min said, her voice tight with fear. Jin closed, his eyes concentrating harder than he ever had before. Through the fracture network, he could see Commander Kristak mobilizing guards sealing off sections of the prison. "It's too soon," Day hissed. "We aren't ready." "We have no choice now," Jin replied, his hands moving across the ancient controls. "Everyone take position at a console, touch them like I showed you." As his allies spread out around the room, Jin connected more deeply with the central column. He could feel the entire prison now. Every system, every door, every energy flow. With a thought, Jin began to take control. Doors throughout the facility slid open. Containment fields failed. Communication systems went offline. "Prisoner uprising in progress," announced the prison's automated system as thousands of captives suddenly found themselves free. In the command center, Commander Kristak watched in horror as system after system failed. On his screens, he could see the prison falling into chaos. "What is happening?" he demanded of his subordinates. No one had an answer. No one could see what Jin saw, that the prison itself had chosen sides in the rebellion, and it had chosen the human. Jin stood at the heart of the ancient control room, his hands immersed in the central column of light. Through the fracture network he had cultivated, he could see the entire prison in chaos. Prisoners roamed free while confused Varaxian guards tried to contain the situation. Commander Kristak was frantically ordering reinforcements from the nearest Imperial fleet. "They're coming," Min warned, her crystalline features reflecting the pulsing blue light. "The Varaxian battle fleet will be here within hours." Jin nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Since connecting with the central column, strange images had been flooding his consciousness, memories that weren't his own, knowledge he shouldn't possess. "Jin?" Tay's gentle voice pulled him back. "What's happening to you?" He blinked, focusing on his friends. "This system, it's talking to me, showing me things." The light column suddenly brightened, and a voice filled the chamber, ancient yet clear, speaking in a language none of them recognized except Jin. "What's it saying?" Wook asked, his 6 limbs twitching nervously. Jin listened, his eyes widening. "It's an AI. The original system built by the architects, it says." He paused, hardly believing the words. "It says I'm a descendant." Min stepped forward. "What does that mean?" The AI answered by projecting images into the center of the room. Holographic displays showing a species that looked remarkably human, yet with subtle differences. They built magnificent crystal cities and ships that sailed between stars. "The architects," Day whispered in awe. "They look like humans," Jin finished. "The AI says humans are direct genetic descendants of the architects. That's why I can control these systems, why the fractures respond to my thoughts." The revelation stunned everyone into silence. For millennia, the Varaxians had claimed to be the rightful rulers of the galaxy, their crystalline evolution the pinnacle of development. But now the truth was clear. They had conquered the architects and stolen their technology, a technology designed to respond to architect biology. The Varaxians didn't just build their empire on stolen technology, Ginny said slowly, processing the information the AI was sharing. "They've been systematically preventing humanity from spreading through the galaxy because they fear humans will reclaim their heritage." Tay's antennae quivered. "That's why human exploration vessels are always turned back or destroyed in this sector." The AI continued, showing Jin images of a massive chamber deep beneath their current position. Within it waited something the architects had left behind, a vessel designed specifically for their return. "There's a ship," Jin told the others. The AI says it can take us out of here, but we need to hurry. On the prison's command deck, Commander Christak watched helplessly as system after system failed. The security feeds showed thousands of prisoners making their way toward the lower levels, following guidance that seemed to come from the prison itself. "What is happening?" he demanded of his technicians. "Unknown, Commander," one replied. "It's as if the prison is helping the prisoners." Christak slammed his crystalline fist against the console. "Find the human. He's behind this." Back in the control chamber, Jin led his friends deeper into the asteroid's core. They followed a path of illuminated glyphs that appeared only as Jin approached. "The AI is guiding us," he explained as they descended through narrow passages that hadn't been used in millennia. Finally, they reached a massive door marked with symbols identical to the ones Jin had first discovered. When he placed his hand against it, the door dissolved, revealing a cavernous hangar carved from the asteroid's heart. Inside floated a ship unlike anything they had ever seen. Sleek and organic in design, it appeared to be made of the same crystal technology as the prison, but far more advanced. It hummed with energy at their approach. "It's beautiful," Tay whispered. "And it's been waiting for someone like you," Min added, looking at Jin with new understanding. As they approached the vessel, a boarding ramp extended to meet them. Inside, control panels lit up in response to Jin's presence. "I can fly this," Jin realized, knowledge flowing into his mind from the ship's systems. "It's designed to respond to architect, to human, neural patterns." The ship's communication system suddenly activated, showing Commander Christak's angry face. "Human prisoner, what have you done?" Jin faced the screen calmly. "I've discovered the truth, Commander, about the architects, about humans, about what the Varaxian Empire has been hiding for thousands of years." The commander's faceted features showed shock. "Impossible. No one could access those systems." "No Varaxian could," Jin corrected. "But I'm not Varaxian. I'm human, a descendant of the architects who built all this. Your empire is built on stolen legacy, and now that legacy has awakened." As Jin spoke, the ancient ship came fully to life around them. Systems that had lain dormant for millennia activated, responding to his presence. Outside the hangar, they could hear the sound of approaching guards. Time was running out. "The Varaxian fleet will be here soon," Wook warned. Jin nodded, settling into the captain's position as the others found seats. The ship's controls formed beneath his hands, responding to his thoughts more than his actions. "Then let's show them what an architect ship can do," Jin said, as the vessel lifted off, preparing to break free from the asteroid prison that had held it for thousands of years. The ancient architect ship rose gracefully from the hangar as the obsidian spire prison broke apart around them. Jin's hands moved across controls that responded to his thoughts more than his touch. The vessel hummed with power that had been dormant for millennia, now fully awakened by his presence. "We have company," Tay warned, her antennae twitching as she looked at the sensor display. "Varaxian warships, at least 7 of them." Through the ship's viewports, they watched as the massive crystalline vessels of the Varaxian fleet positioned themselves in attack formation. Each was many times larger than their architect ship, bristling with weapons designed to destroy anything that challenged the Empire. "They're hailing us," Min reported from the communications station. Jin nodded, and a holographic image of the Varaxian Emperor himself appeared before them. Unlike the other Varaxians, the Emperor's crystalline body was tinged with gold and red, signifying his supreme status. "Human," the Emperor's voice resonated with barely controlled rage. "You possess technology you cannot understand. Surrender now and your death will be quick." Jin stood tall, facing the projection. "I understand this technology better than you ever could, Emperor. It was built for humans, for the descendants of the architects." The Emperor's faceted features shimmered with fury. "The architects are gone. Their legacy belongs to us now." "You stole it," Jin replied calmly, "and now it has found its way back to its rightful inheritors." Without warning, the lead Varaxian warship fired, a blast of energy streaking toward them. Before Jin could react, the architect vessel's defenses activated automatically, absorbing the attack completely. "Impossible," the Emperor exclaimed. Jin smiled, feeling the ship's systems opening further to his mind. "Tell your people the truth, Emperor. Tell them how the Varaxians conquered the architects and claimed their achievements as your own. Tell them how you've been suppressing humanity because you fear we'll reclaim what was built for us." Instead of responding, the Emperor cut the transmission. All 7 warships opened fire simultaneously. Jin closed his eyes, connecting more deeply with the ship's systems. Defensive shields shimmered around them, easily deflecting the barrage. Then, with a thought, Jin activated the ship's weapons. Beams of blue energy lanced out, precisely disabling the Varaxian ship's weapon systems without destroying the vessels themselves. "I don't want to kill them," Jin explained to his surprised crew. "That's not the architect way, or the human way." As the disabled Varaxian fleet drifted helplessly, Jin accessed the ship's communications array. With its power, he could broadcast across the entire galaxy. "People of the galaxy," Jin began, his voice transmitted to every world under Varaxian control. "My name is Jin Lee of Earth. What I'm about to tell you has been hidden for thousands of years." He shared everything: how the Varaxians had conquered, the architects stolen their technology and built an empire on lies, how they had systematically prevented humanity from expanding because they feared humans would reclaim their ancestors' legacy. "The Varaxian Empire is built on deception," Jin continued. "But today that changes. Today we begin anew." On thousands of worlds across the galaxy, beings of all species listened. In the days that followed, rebellions ignited everywhere. Not violent uprisings, but peaceful revolutions as the truth spread, and the Varaxian Empire's foundation of lies crumbled. 1 month later, Jin stood on the observation deck of the architect vessel, now renamed New Dawn. Below, on a neutral world called Harmony, representatives from 50 species gathered for the first meeting of the Galactic Coalition. "Nervous?" Tai asked, joining him at the viewport. Jin smiled. "A little. Being a prison escapee didn't prepare me for diplomacy." "You freed more than just prisoners," she reminded him. "You freed the truth." The coalition meeting was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Species that had been enemies under Varaxian rule now sat together, discussing mutual cooperation. Even some Varaxians attended, those who had rejected their empire's lies. When Jin entered the grand chamber, conversations quieted. All eyes turned to the human who had changed everything. "I don't come before you as a conqueror," Jin began, looking around at the diverse gathering. "Humans don't want to replace the Varaxian Empire with our own. The architects didn't build their technology for domination, but for connection." He gestured to the delegates. "Look around you. Different species, different worlds, different histories, but we all share this galaxy. The architects understood that strength comes from diversity, not uniformity. The new coalition wasn't perfect. Old hatreds didn't disappear overnight. But it was a beginning, a chance to build something better than what had come before." Later that evening, as the twin suns set over Harmony, Jin stood alone on a balcony overlooking the coalition building. He thought about his journey. From prisoner to rebel to diplomat. Min found him there, her crystalline features catching the last light of day. "The Emperor has requested a meeting," she told him. "He wants to negotiate." Jin nodded. "Tell him I'll see him tomorrow." "Are you worried?" she asked. Jin looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky. Somewhere out there was Earth, still unaware of its true heritage, of the legacy waiting among the stars. "No," he replied with quiet confidence. "For the first time in a very long time, I think the galaxy is heading towards something better." A single human's escape had indeed changed everything. Not through conquest, but through truth. Not through domination, but through understanding. The age of liberation had begun.